Really, you should tell me what you were mechavim with all the Ashayotza and all the stuff that we learned. I'm sure that you said the bracha with all the HaKavanos, so you should have a new pshat already.
On the Tilat Yadayim stuck a lot. Ashayotza I haven't quite worked in yet.
Yeah. Adam Dasidayim, that was the first one that we did.
And this is something I actually don't know from a halachic point of view. If I wake up an hour earlier than I need to wake up to use the restroom.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I use the restroom. I wash. I said, should I be washing with a bracha after that if I know I'm going back to bed? That's question number one. Question number two is I said Asher Yatzar. So say I wake up later and don't go to the bathroom.
Good question.
See, all of this assumes like back in the day when you when you woke up, you got up.
People were normal.
Well, when you woke up, you got up. Now our lives are ruled by clocks. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So when I get up, it's not necessarily my schedule to get up. When I wake up, it's not necessarily my schedule to get up. So,
according to halacha, I'm not sure. According to Kabbalah, you should you definitely could, because the Arizal and Rashash hold that you could say, they actually did this basically. They would get up at Chatzos and say the Brichsa Shachar. That's what the Rashash has you do,
right?
And go back to sleep, or they don't really. The Arizal doesn't mind if you go back to sleep before Shachar.
Oh, and you go back to sleep, but then in the morning you obviously don't do it again.
Right. So in other words, if you want to say it, then you probably could. If you have to, that's another question. But I don't think.
Okay. So then, what's the activator? It's falling asleep while it's dark.
So no, this depends on the whole. The Ashkenaz minhag is usually to just say everything in shul. So they might also not even say Ashiyotza in the middle of the night.
But we're not concerned with the Ashkenaz minhag.
Yeah, the Sfard minhag depends who you ask, but the Rashash minhag is to just say it by Chatzos.
But I mean, listen, I don't wake up for Tikkun Chatzot, but the minhag was to say it at home, and we say it at home.
Yeah.
You know, like shul davening starts with Tichat Eliyahu and Tfilat Chana and HaKavanos.
It doesn't say brachot, right?
No, brachot are done at home.
Right. You're supposed to do it by Chatzos at home. Yeah. Right, so that's. I think that's what. Then you might as well say all the brachas. I don't know. Actually, that doesn't really make sense, but
that doesn't, right? Because if you're not getting dressed, and then it doesn't fit with the Gemara at all.
Mm-hmm. Although you might be able to, but it's very weird.
Right.
So I don't know. You could have. If you say. So we discussed about Ashiyotza. You were not. Someone else asked me this. I looked it up, but I already forgot. According to the Ben Ish Chai or people like him, you don't say Ashiyotza in the morning if you didn't use the bathroom. According to the Ashkenaz halacha, you definitely do. So this is So according to the Shulchan Aruch and the Rama, you say Ashiyotza in the morning even if you didn't use the bathroom. But the Ben Ish Chai and others claim that according to the Arizal, you don't. So then, in your case, it would make sense to actually do it the first time.
Right. And then make a bracha on washing also. Then that's the question.
Well, yes, basically. I mean, the washing you don't have to. You could wash later again and make a bracha. But
what do you mean? I can make a bracha twice in the morning?
No, but washing you could do again. It's not like a problem. It's not like
I can wash, but the question is with a bracha, when to make the bracha.
Yeah, you could make the Al Sidayim also.
I feel like it was in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch that I saw this. That just al pi halacha, if you sleep for more than a half hour, you got to make all this stuff again.
At night, according to it's not. Nobody's really going to do that. There, you might, according to because the bracha we're not going to say probably. Actually, the Al Sidayim. Well, I don't know. According to Ari, it has to be in order. So you would probably say until Sidayim Ashiyotza and Neshama all together. It would make sense to say them because Arizal wants them to work together. Remember, so you'd probably say them all in the beginning. Yeah, I don't see that there's a problem with that, unless you want to say that the until Sidayim has to do with davening and stuff, and I don't know, but I don't think it'll be a problem anyways.
I think I need to print a laminated Birkot Shachar card to keep in my
I'm sure there's
next
one with kavanot for like I've
Yeah.
seen a kavanot laminated with the kavanas hamikvah that you could.
Right.
So,
Right.
who knows? Okay. So you said that the Alan Klasidayim, yeah, Nashi Yitzhak, and Lehan Neshama. Yeah. So yeah, so that's it. So we did all those three brachas, the three gar, we call it, right? Kesech Chachma Bina. And now we'll try to do a little bit of the rest. The Arizal doesn't really have kavanas for each of them. He has like kavanas for 3 or 4 of them, and then the rest have just the general pshat of them being 18 and so on. But the few that do have, they reference entire stories that he has to tell us. So we'll have to try. We'll try to do today just the first one, which is Hanosen Lasechvi. I mean, is it the first one in the Arizal's order? I don't think it is. Yeah, it is, right? And then we'll see what we can do. Okay. Now, this is all based on a lot of prior art, as they say in the patent office. So he can't really copyright it. And it's all based on Zohar and Ramak, and I'll try to read a little Ramak also, because it's literally copy-paste a lot of the stuff from the Ramak, just said in his slightly changed to the Arizal's language. So let's try to first have the pshat. This is the bracha Nes Lasechvi Bina. Now the pshat of it is kind of interesting because this is a bracha on differentiating between day and night, right? Between night and day, technically. Now Sechvi, according to this is based on a pasuk in Iev that says Mi shas patuchot chachma o mi natan Lasechvi Bina. That's part of the 50 questions that God asked Iev famously. And the Kabbalist said that it's connected Chamishim Shari Bina. So there's like a test, there's a lot of people, Iev is full of asking God questions, and then God goes, I have some questions for you too. And he has a list of 49 or 50 different questions, and most of them start with like me. So me is Bina. So that's how one of the ways where they thought that it has to do with the 50 Shari Bina. Anyways, and one of the questions is, do you know where wisdom comes from? So who put wisdom? Mishas Batuchas Chachma. Who put wisdom in people's kidneys? I think Tuchot is. O minatan la Sechvi Bina. Whoever who put in Sechvi means your heart in the Pshat. Who put Bina, understanding, in your heart? Like Sechvi, the Mepharshim say it's like Sechvi is like a lashon maskiot. Like things that you could look at, so like looking over the heart somehow is called sechvi, but it obviously means the heart. That's the pshat, and then in this language of the bracha is based on that pasuk. Therefore, the simple meaning of the bracha is that we thank God for giving us wisdom, knowledge, bina, bina, understanding, which can differentiate between day and night. In other words, we assume that animals or whatever, some less smart, intelligent being than us wouldn't understand the difference between day and night. It's all the same. And thankfully, we know the difference. So we wake up, and the first thing is you say, like a bracha and da. So it's interesting, just like in Shemana Esrei, like the first tefillah, the first bakasha is on Atachan and Ladam Das. The first hodaya that we do in the morning, the first bichat hashacha, which are like very basic. Like really, it's like a whole. I really like it because it's like a whole davening. It's like it's mostly shvach hodaya, but it's actually also bakasha, right? Like we end it off with this whole yirutzan and stuff. So I kind of see it sometimes like as a mini shachris, like a mini, like Olam Asiyah, the whole, just like when we get to Olam Atzilas, we could do Shemana Esrei and all like the very lofty way, in the very simple, like rolling out of bed way, you could do the whole Sederat Tefillah, like from Hanosen Lasechvi until Hagol Machzad Tov Lam Yisrael, Birchas HaTorah, all of that. It's kind of, and we kind of do repeat it, like for example, Birchas HaTorah gets repeated in Avar Rabba, right? There's even a halacha that if you forgot to say Birchas HaTorah and you said Avat Olam, Avar Rabba, you don't have to say Birchas HaTorah anymore. So there is like a duality, like a doubling of things. So I usually see this whole seder of Birchas HaShach, and that's also the halacha. Like for example, another way you could see it in halacha is that you're not supposed to eat before you daven, and that's for women too, by the way, because women are chayav b'tefillah just like men. Now the minig is, I don't know about what men do nowadays, but the old Ashkenaz minig is that women don't really daven. And they do eat. And the Magen Avraham said that it kind of doesn't, it's not, even if they did daven, they wouldn't be makbet to not eat before davening. The Magen Avraham said that it's because they technically davened already, because everyone says Birchas HaShachar, including women. They even wrote, the women even wrote in their own bracha into Birchas HaShachar, so they must have been saying it. And right, Shasana Kertzone, which is not in the Gemara, it's some woman wrote it. And
a woman wrote it? What do
Yeah.
you say that based on?
I made it up. Well, it says in the Todd, in the source, where it says the not getting into this whole controversy, but it says that there's a bracha shlo yisani yeshiv and hagla anoshim to say shasana kertzana. It's kind of made up. So I guess whoever made it up was a woman. Like who else?
Okay.
Well, whatever the meaning of it is, but it seems like it's a minhag. In other words, I assume most minhags to be bottom up kind of things, right? It started from the people that started it. So I assume that there was a woman. I don't know. Maybe not. She asked her husband to write her a bracha. Wow. Anyways, I'm just saying that since everyone says Birchas HaShachar, so that's considered you already daven. So like he says Midaraisi, you don't have to say there's no nusach of tefillah, so you already daven, so now you could eat. And actually the Chassidim that eat also are makbid on something like that. Like even though they say, well, we have to eat before davening because we want to daven with kavanah and we don't want to be hungry. They do say Birchas HaShachar before usually, or at least something. Birchas HaTorah, Kriyas Shema. So it's another way where I see that this is like a whole seder tefillah for itself, basically. If you don't have time, maybe you can only say that. I don't know. So anyway, so Ananis Lasechvi is kind of the first move you do. Well, technically after these other three, but if we could consider it starting here in a certain sense. The first thing is a blessing on das, on knowledge, technically on Bina, which in this context lavchin. So like we learn in Masechtas Bruchas that the siman for saying Kriyas Shema, for putting on tefillin, for other things is when there's enough light that we could differentiate between different things, right? Between blue and green, or you could recognize your friend, different kinds of things. In other words, this is like an amazing thing that you're supposed to wonder about every morning, that we could know that we know the difference between night and day. It's always like the most basic difference, but you know the difference of that. You might have not known it. Like there's some senile people somewhere that don't know if it's night or day. So thank you for knowing that it's night and day, that it's the morning. Wow, I noticed that it's the morning. So you noticed that it's the morning. So you say bracha. And that's the simple pshat. Now, interestingly, the halacha says in the Seder of the Gemara, says that when do we say all these brachas? So they each have their time when they say it, right? Unlike us, unlike our Siddur, which just has them all on the big list, it's each one on the action, on the story of it happening. So, when you touch your eyes, you say Pekah and so on, and we'll see. So when do you say Hanosen Lasechvi? Hanosen Lasechvi you say when you hear your alarm clock. That's what it's a bracha on. That's why it's the first bracha. So you're still laying in bed. The reason why, just so you know, the reason why we stopped doing this, or some of us stopped doing it, I don't know what everyone does, is because we came up with a chimra that you have to have clean hands before saying a bracha. And obviously when you're laying in bed, you didn't wash your hands yet, so it doesn't make sense. But according to the Gemara, they didn't have this chimra that you have to have clean hands. Although they later would say make it l'asidaim and make a bracha on it, but they didn't have this. This doesn't come from the Gemara. There's no it's not a Talmudic idea that you're not allowed to say a bracha with dirty hands. So they would just say it literally. And the first bracha, according to that schedule, according to that order, is a nice Lasechvi vina. So literally you're laying in bed, and it says Katshama kol tarnagol. You say a nice Lasechvi vina. So of course they didn't have alarm clocks in those days yet, but they did have natural alarm clocks known as roosters, and they would make a lot of noise. And they would wake you up. So you hear waking up, so you say Anos Lasechvi vina. And then some people, the Rishonim, some maybe Rishalmi already, explained that Sechvi could have a dual meaning. Although literally, the pshat is that you make a bracha on your heart. Sechvi is a heart, like the pasuk. And you just, when did you notice that it's the morning? By the alarm clock ringing, or by the hen crying, or that's how you heard that it's the morning. But the bracha is on yourself. But they said that you can additionally say another pshat, that Sechvi is a chicken, actually. I'm not sure in which language this is, but it seems apparently it comes from it says somehow connected it to like Latin or Greek. Some of the languages that were spoken in their area had a word for a rooster that sounded like Sechvi. And therefore, maybe in Lashon Chazal also, I'm not sure about that. Therefore, they said that Sechvi, you could say, is also the rooster has has wisdom, has understanding to differentiate between day and night, because obviously he does, because he wakes up in the morning and starts making his noise. So it has this dual meaning. So there's like the external meaning, like thank you for the alarm clock. In other words, if there would be nowadays, they would say Hanosen la smartphone sechel to know what time it is, and he gave me sechel, right? So and his sechel helps me, right? He wakes me up. So like otherwise I would be still sleeping. So thank you for creating the knowledge in the technology or in the nature, and the same knowledge then goes to me. And that's the pshat and the story of the pshat as far as I made it up. So now what happens here, if you think about this, what's interesting is that if you ever heard a rooster, it doesn't actually know what time the morning is. They start making their noise. I don't even know when, like 2 o'clock a.m. or 3 a.m. or even earlier, depending, I guess, on all kinds of different, I don't know what. So in other words, technically this bracha is said before the day came. So like you're still laying in bed and it might still be dark and it might still be chitzas. So therefore the Ari and the Zar before him already understood that this bracha can be said from the middle of the night, from chatzas alayla. And it's true, the roosters start to make their noise, then they go back to sleep and they make more noise, and then I don't exactly know the schedule because I've never lived on a farm, but I have heard it. So this is actually one of the ways that was very helpful, since the Zohar created this whole ritual, this whole idea of waking up in the middle of the night and saying Tik Chatzas or learning. Actually, mostly learning. Tik Chatzas was the later ritualization of that. But in the Zohar, there was mainly about waking up to learn. So the Rizal is going to try to explain, and the Zohar, where he's going to try to explain this whole story with the Tarnagel, with the chicken and all of this, to connect to waking to Chatzas already. It's not really about the morning, it's about Chatzas. So that's what he says. So now, the Rizal says it like this. Ki layla koydem chatzos, koydem chatzos, velayla achatzos. Okay, so this is based on a whole long drusha that the Rizal has, which is in the end of Shar HaKavanos. In other words, in the end of the day, when he talks about the night. And the Rizal, based on the Zohar, says that there's 2 different languages in the pasuk. Sometimes they call the night Lail, like Lail Shemirim, or it's based on a pasuk Shomer Mami Lail, the pasuk in Yeshaya, and then it says Shomer Mami Laila. So the Zohar very much likes these kind of words that have he sees them as a masculine way and a feminine way. It's not really that, but apodictic, I don't think. But it's, since usually feminine nouns have a high in the end, so the Zohar wants to understand that the word with the high is the feminine one, and the word without is like, he doesn't literally call it the masculine one. He usually calls it like the feminine before she has metukan. So the famous drush of the Zohar about this, for example, is about nar and nara. Sometimes it says in the Torah nara without a hay. It says with a comma, it's nara, and then nun ayin resh, but it doesn't have a hay in the end. And the Zohar says that both of these are referring to the Nuk. Both of these are referring to the Shekhinah. But when is she called nar and when is she called nara? She's called nar before she has marriage. In other words, when she's still in the Narizal's language, when she's still full of gvurot. And then when she has midikabilas tchar, when she has a yichud, then she gets called nara. So it's like the hay is a certain amtuka, it's a certain sweetening of her reality, which is mostly based on criticism, a lot of gvurot. After she has the sweetening, she's called with a hay. That's the Zohar, for example, about na. That is has a whole chat in that, but that's just to show you the structure. And the same kind of drish the Zohar says about Lail and Laila. Maybe like the pasuk says, Shemer Mami Lail, Shemer Mami Laila, Ama Shemer Asabayke Vegam Laila. It's an interesting pasuk. And it says that the watchman is waiting. First it's Lail, and then it's Laila. So in other words, the night obviously talks about the Shekhinah, right? We all know that night, Midas Yoim, there's Midas Yoim and Midas Laila, called in the Gemara. Midas Yoim is called the Zah. The Tferes Midas Laila is called the Nuk, the Shekhinah. And then the Nuk has 2 different states. There's a state which was known as Koydem Chatzas, and there's a state known as After Chatzas. Koydem Chatzas, she is called Lail, and After Chatzas, she's called Laila, with a hay. In other words, and the same is in the reality of the night. This is the Zohar says this 10,000 times, that the night is a bad time, like it says in in Bachinavshi, right? Night is the time when all the thieves come out and all the raccoons and I don't know what. And the Zohar says that's only in the first half of the night. Because the second half of the night, people are already waking up and the world is actually starting to wake up, starting to sweeten. So in other words, the night itself has a sweetened part and a bitter part. The first half of the night is the harsh part, and the second half of the night is the bitter part, and that's a big part of the whole idea of waking up in Chtzas and when that night splits is kind of about breaking through the darkness of the night. It's kind of about creating a tikkun out of this whole situation called night. Now that's the basic structure of the day and the night, and that's why. And it's also naturally like that. That's why I'm gonna have to say it, because nobody that I know has this schedule of waking up at Chtzas. Maybe some Breslever that try to do it literally. But almost nobody that I know. And actually, no, yeah. There's like a kollel Chtzas somewhere where you're like crazy people that they sleep in the day and they were up at night. But it's not a real thing.
My father does on Thursday nights.
Who?
My father on Thursday nights.
Oh, okay.
In his shul, on Thursday nights, they get together at Chatzot and do Tikkun Chatzot and read all of Sefer Tehillim and until Shachrit, whatever, they do their thing.
Yeah, so you could do it once a week, maybe.
For a while, no, for a while.
Does he sleep in the first half of the night, or does he just not sleep?
I don't know. I think he sleeps the first half of the night. But listen, he's older. Older men, older Jewish men, he can only sleep 4 hours, even if he tried to sleep longer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just part of his routine. I don't think it can be done while you're holding a job.
Yeah, that's the problem. Yeah, what were you saying?
There's a kollel in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
That does.
Maybe
they do Sunday through Thursday night.
Yeah. Yes, if there's a kollel, they pay enough, maybe. But anyways, it's still not practical. Even the people in that kollel it's usually whatever. Mostly the people that don't have shalom bayis, they go to that kollel. So yeah, it's like a good alternative, Anyways, what was I getting into because the reality is that I don't think that I was thinking about this today. So it's kind of the opposite. In other words, since we have a certain schedule and like certain accepted normative schedule with clocks and all of that. So to us, it seems like waking up Chtzas would be like this crazy person, like going against, like negata teva, going against the reality and, sleeping. Obviously, they slept at some time, right? It's not about not sleeping. It's about sleeping. Maybe they sleep in the afternoon or sleeping. But firstly, people used to go sleep much earlier and so on. But it's actually the opposite. And there's actually some history done about this. So it's actually the opposite. In other words, let me try to explain what I mean to say. The way we see it is like a Seder Hayom, and the Seder Hayom is also in halacha, right? It's Shachar, Mincha, Mariv. Okay, very good. And that somehow conforms to our normal schedule. You wake up and all of that, and you go to work, and then you do Mincha. At some point, Mincha is the only one that doesn't really fit anywhere, but okay. And then there's some Kabbalim that have this like otherworldly idea of what their schedule is supposed to be. You're supposed to be waking up in the middle of the night and doing Tikkun Chatzas and whatever the whole Seder and davening by Vasikin, which is all not the natural way not the normal way of things. And they're like, that's how it seems to be understood today, even by the people that want to do it. That's how they understand it. But actually, I think it's quite the opposite. I think that in the place and time where waking up by Chatzas was ritualized, was given meaning in this whole theory, the normal people would actually be waking up by Chatzas. In other words, and since they were waking up, so they had to sanctify, they had to be mekadosh, they had to give it some meaning in their whole system. So in other words, this is actually the radical making your life, your lived experience conform to the Torah with amazing tradition which are against the pshat, because all people pshat, the day starts in the morning. And the Zohar says, no, the day starts by Chatzas, because there's some research on this, that in pre-industrial societies, when you go to sleep, when the sun sets, and definitely in the summer, in the winter, in the summer, there's not that much time. But in the winter, when there's longer nights, then naturally most people don't need to sleep 12 hours. So you kind of start waking up and at midnight. Well, not literally at midnight, like 2 a.m. or whatever it is. And actually, in some like cities, the coffee shops used to open up. In Tzfas, actually, and when the Arizal's times, the coffee shops actually opened up. It wasn't only the Kabbalah waking up in the middle of the night. Like all the coffee houses would wake up and people would go out and, talk about, it was like a very calm time because there's no work. And, and it's just like socializing and whatever, doing some light work. And then you would go back to sleep for a little bit. And then, the morning would come. So, and it's called two-phase sleep. You could look it up. There's some controversy how common this was, but there was definitely such a thing. And I'm definitely going to assume that the Mekabalim that created this schedule were actually basing themselves on we could say like on a secular schedule, because all their neighbors were also waking up Bertzas, and because their chickens were starting to make noise. And that's another reason. And they said, well, once we're up, and this is like the time that people use for for intimacy, right? It's also a good, this whole idea. And also in Kabbalah, Arizal is very interested in having sex only after Chtzas. And it's actually based on a Gemara, maybe somewhat. But the Gemara also had similar ideas. And this was, people used to do that. He wasn't the only crazy guy waking up at Chtzas and doing it. Everyone else, all his neighbors were doing it in the same time. Because it's like a good, when you go to sleep, you're tired. And then people would wake up somewhat, and at least some people, maybe not the children and so on. And then the Kabbalim said, okay, therefore we'll make some seder, we'll learn a little bit, we'll say some tefillas, we'll use this time for our purposes. And they even created a whole theological Kabbalistic theory for explaining what's going on Bechtzas, and they told the whole story of the Shechina coming in the Gan Eden Bechtzas and so on. So since I understand it like this, so once the reality is not like that, so it's not like that, we should make a new pshat, actually going back to the simple pshat, which is that, however you understand it. But it's still a valuable idea in the sense that the night isn't only night. Night is not it's not black and white, right? Although it's black, like dark, it's not black and white. And there's some time known as Laila, right? There's Lail. Okay, Lail is when we talk about night as like symbolizing darkness and closedness and constriction, all of that. But there's also Laila, which actually symbolizes the opposite. Like night has a time of intimacy, night has a time of it's some quiet. You could get some thoughts done. You could be mechadish chiddush Torah, and it still works. And, there's a Chassidish vertel that says that since the Mekabulim were metaking the second half of the night, now we have to be metaking the first half. So that's why we have electricity that makes us up in the first half. Most of us, I don't know of many people that go to sleep before Chtzas. And yeah, so that's my hack about that. Anyway, so Narizal is just referencing this and said, therefore, this bracha is whenever you hear the Tad Nagol, known maybe as the Lasechvi, and therefore it's from the second half of the night. Now he explains it how, and then there's explanation for this, and this is also based on the very interesting Zohar. And it says like this: Lasechvi, his Gavriel, v'sada gvira. V'bechatzi alayla nimsheches ha'oras ha'bina ala gvira, v'zeh she'omer hanosen Lasechvi bina. So this is based, I'm going to show you. Actually, let's finish the piece and I'll show you where it comes from. And just shortly, the idea is that the Zohar says, the Zohar asks a question. What makes the rooster cry? Like, why is he waking up in the middle of the night? What's this about? So the Zohar says that the rooster is really, at least like the shayrish of the rooster, maybe you could think about how it connects to the real one. It's called a malach. And the Mefarshim said that means the Malach Gavriel. Why would Gavriel be a rooster? Because the rooster is called Gever, right? Gever is right? We say in Kapuras, Gever. And Gever, Gavriel, so matches and symbolizes Gvura, right? Gever is obviously Gvura. And this Malach, he's Gvura. So he's like the first half of the night, like the Gvura that's Sholet on the world. And now at some point the Zohar says there's a little spark of fire that comes out of somewhere, some other malach or something, and it goes under the wings of the rooster, and that's what makes it cry. That's the Zohar's pshat of why roosters cry at night. In other words, what he means to say in the malach is that, according to the Arizal and the Ramak, is that Gvura is like the Lail, like the Malchus, which is when it's only Gvurot. And then Bachatzois, there's Hanosen Lasechvi Bina. So Sechvi is Gvura, the Malach Gabriel, Sechvi, and it's Gematria also Gabriel somehow. I have to remember how. It's not Gematria simply, but B'mispekot and Sechvi is Gematria Gabriel, and also Malach Gabriel is Gematria Sechvi. So Sechvi is Gabriel. And then when we're thanking that Hanosen Lasechvi Bina. So B'chatzi Alayla Nimshach Ores Bina Ala Gvura. Hanosen Lasechvi Bina. So generally we all know that the way to be Mamtik Gvura, although we have to understand what's the pshat exactly here, but this is a general thing, is always through the Bina. Although the Bina is the source of Gvurot, it's also the source of Hamtakata Gvurot. Like we talk about in Adinim and Tokim Ele B'Shar Sham. Sharish HaGvuris is Bina. And when we give Bina to Gvura, so however you understand that sweetens the Gvura. That sweetens the din of the Malchus by having Bina. Or in the Arizal's language, you would say by giving Moichin. So the Malchus in itself, like a tzvak, when it doesn't have Moichin, is Gvuris built in Metukas. And when we give it Moichin, so you wake up, give it Moichin, there's the whole story of the however the Arizal understands this actually, that's Mamtik the Gvura al Dea Bina. And that's how he's going to stand. Hanosen Lasechvi Bina. So the bracha is not only about the Sechvi having knowledge, having understanding to differentiate. What it's really meaning to say is that this Sechvi, which symbolizes Gvura, actually achieves a higher level known as Bina, and it gets Bina, and that's why we say a bracha on it. And the other Mefarshim say that that's actually, like it says in the Pasuk, mi nasan Lasechvi Bina. So mi is the Bina, and the Bina gives Bina, right? It gives itself to the Sechvi, which is the Gvura. And that's what we say a bracha on. In other words, the bracha is on the first half of the night, turning into the second half of the night. Or in other words, on the Gvura itself, achieving Bina, which is Gvura Mimuteket. And it's a psoid that there's another language for talking about the same thing, or another symbol, another pusik about this, is psoid Mashakasav, Mashamarakusav, Vayavale Yain Vayasht. It says in Pashas told us, right? And there's like a whole time, Vayavale Yain Vayasht. And the Zohar is very interested in that pasuk because it's talking about Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gvura, right? And how do we mamtik Gvura? By bringing him wine. Now, wine itself has two different parts. It's just like Lail. So every time there's Gvura, every time anything relevant to the night or to the Gvura has two kinds of aspects. Like the Gemara says about wine, that wine is Zocha Meshamema, Zocha Mesamcha, right? So Yain is Mesamech, so Yain Mesamech, but Yain could also make you alcoholic. There's a hard side, there's a dark side of it. Just like the Gvura, just like everything relevant to the Shekhinah has always a dark side where the Shekhinah turns into night, and there's all kinds of klippas and all kinds of evil, literal sitrach that come out of that. But if it's from Bina, then it would be mimutak. And that's called in the Arizal and the Zohar, Yainam Samach, Visod Ayim, Avla Gvura Ba'atzma Yainam Meshaka, Visod Alal. So there's Yain, which makes you happy, and there's Yain that makes you drunk. Yainam Samach, Yainam Meshaka. Yainam Meshaka is Gvura by itself. That's not good. That's the wine that we try to stay away from. The wine that we try to bring to Yitzchak, in other words, to the Gvura, is the Yain HaMesamech, which is the wine, just like when we have wine, there's in Chazal's times at least, they would always put water in their wine, right? It's called mizug, right? They would be mizug their wine with water, and people that do HaKavanos still do it, at least symbolically. Put some water in your wine, your kiddush, and so on. And that's to show that wine in itself, in other words, the Gvura in itself is never good. But when it's mazug correctly, when it's balanced correctly, when it's added the water or the chesed or the bina, then it will actually help you, it will actually make you happy. So that's what it says. In other words, the Rizal sees not as a passive thing. So there is Yoim and there is Laila. And thanks to Bina, we can separate them, we can differentiate them. It's thanks to Bina, we separated the Lail from the Laila. Because I have Bina, because I give this Ha'ara from Bina, so my night is not only dark, my night can also have some light in it. That's by having Bina, by waking up Echtzas, or now it's night, so we can turn it over and in however time reality it will be. That's his pshat. I wanted to show you how this is all plagiarized from the Ramak. So I brought you the Ramak Siddur also. And if you read the Ramak Siddur, you'll see that he more or less brings you the whole story. And we should really look up the Zohars, but that's going to be even longer. The Ramak says that it's very long. He says, but in Tanigol, I'm just going to translate this. It would be very long to tell you everything that the Zohar talks about it, but in short, he says that there's a Malach, and he said the Mefarshim say it's Gabriel. The Zohar doesn't say the name of the Malach, but we're assuming that it's the Malach Gabriel. And until Chatzos, this Malach is Ne'elam. It's hiding in the Tanigol. And then by Chatzos, it wakes up. And that's why it's called Gabriel, Hashem Gvura. Our Tanigol is called Gever, it's called Gvura. And then when the Gvura, when this power gets into the literal rooster, then it wakes up and it makes six. The Zohar says it makes six sounds. So 6 sounds is like, I'm not sure why, it's probably against the 6 spheres, but I don't know why 6. And it wakes up, and it wakes up all the other. And he explains it that it's like Chazal say, every grass has a police, like a shoter, like how you would say, a taskmaster from above, which hits it or it tells it to grow. So in other words, he's trying to explain how the literal physical rooster is connected to this whole story with the Bina and the Gvura. He says because everything is sourced from Aluchim and this whole story. So this Malach called Gabriel actually gives the power to the physical rooster, to the material one, to make his noise. But it's really we're caring about the upper one. And therefore the Tanigol starts to make noise and they make 6. The Tanigol Elyon gives 6 voices, maybe also the Tanigol Tachtan, and the Zohar actually goes through the 6 and explains what they are, but we have to look it up and see. And then here he gives some miser about this. And he says, when you'll realize this thing, you should be misaira to realize how great it is to wake up at Chatzos. Because at that time, in other words, this Gvura is the Zohar says that this is really the din, Bezdin Shel Mal, which writes down everything that you did during the day. That's what the Tanigol is going to start reading. So the Tanigol is crying. Really, he's not only crying that you should wake up, he's crying, yesterday you did this, and then you did that, and so on. Like we talk about Rosh Hashanah, right? Biyad kol adam yachtem. There's like some kind of, Excel sheet over there that writes down everything you did. And that's the Tanigol. That's connected to the Tanigol. I'm not really sure why it's connected to the Tanigol. I don't know. Because the same Malach does it. We have to look up the Zohar and understand. But he's just giving us a summary. But anyways, he's saying that's why you have to wake up at Chatzos and do tshuva. That's why their meaning was to do tshuva and Chatzos. And then you should also realize that you shouldn't sleep all night. And you should also realize another mitzvah that he says is that you should make a kavachomer from the Malach, because the Malach gives so much praise to God. There's 6 koiles which are praise, I guess. Before he was saying that it's the din. Now he's saying kol shkena adam, that you should give praise and thanks and all the good things that you have. And you should also think that the literal Tanigol also wakes up, and so this is Perek Shira. Perek Shira understands all the noises that all the animals make as some kind of praise. So you should learn from your animals. If you live on a farm, you should learn from them how to praise, how to say shachris. That's Musa. And the Kol Shken Adam. So but this connects very much to what we were talking in the beginning, like how the Lasechvi has 2 meanings. Like there's the Lasechvi, the Tanigol, and then that's supposed to wake up your heart. So if your rooster is up, why aren't you up? Something like that. And then he says something else. It's hard to follow, but it's here. Every serious person should have a rooster in his house. Otherwise, you're not going to wake up. Anyway, this is the ancient source of buying an alarm clock. Actually, the Zohar actually had a different alarm clock. I don't know, maybe they didn't have roosters wherever the Zohar lived. And the Zohar says you should use a water clock. I don't know exactly how it works, but there was some patent how to have an alarm clock before there were alarm clocks. And since these people were very interested in waking up in the middle of the night, they actually had some kind of alarm clock. But anyways, you should have this. There's a mitzvah. The Ramak says it's a mitzvah to have chickens in your house. So
my cat is very effective.
What?
My cat is very effective.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know which sphere a cat is from, though.
No, I don't even want to know.
Yeah. Anyways, then he goes to his pshat. Lasechvi, that's what I was telling you. Lasechvi, Mispah Koten is Gabriel, and also it's Malach Gabriel is Gematria Lasechvi. and it's got Rishadai Havaya, which is Tiferes and Malchus, Medasim, Medas Laila, and then it gives this whole the difference between the beginning of the night and the end of the night. And it says in the Gemara that in the Chatzos there's a Riach Tzufein. That this is the Medrash of the Zohar on the Agudah. It says in Sechtes Bruches that David HaMelech would. So this is all based on that. A lot of the Zohar is based on that story of David HaMelech. In Sechtes Bruches, David HaMelech used to sleep half of the night and also like somewhat sleep, and then by Chatzos he would have this his kinner set up, right, which would start to sing, because according to the idea that from Chatzos there's a northern wind from Rech Tzufein that comes and blows, and he set up an alarm clock basically. He set up his whatever instrument it was. Actually, I think I looked up what it was. It's called a wind harp or something like that. There's a thing that you could actually make work from the wind, and like the Golden Gate Bridge, Anyways, and he would wake up. So the Zohar says, Rech Tzufein, according to the Zohar's way of seeing the directions, north is always Gvura, because Mizrach is right, like we have in the Lilith and all of that. Mizrach is Durham, Tzufein is Gvura, Mizrach, and so on. And that symbolizes the Gvura, waking up. In other words, and the Arizal, and they explained what it really means, and it says that Machna Gavriel starts to sing, and that's what it says in Shir HaShirim. So we start from the left side, like Smoile Tachas Daroshi. So it starts from the left. So the left is what wakes you up, and then you come to Teman. Teman is the right. Teman is another word for Darom. And then Yavai Doidi Legane. Then Hakadosh Baruch Hu, the Shechina, comes into the Gan Eden to learn with the tzaddikim. So that's what God and the Shechina do. And Chatzos of the night, they come to learn with the tzaddikim and the Gan Eden, and that's why the tzaddikim in this world would wake up in that time and participate in the learning. And then the tzaddik virim and tzaddik bina, that's what the Ramak says. And it's Lasechvi Bina, because the Bina is there to be mamtik this gvura of Gabriel through the Bina, and that's the pshat of this bracha. And then he gives another pshat which I didn't see. Just Sechvi is I don't know, some other whole pshat. It seems to be connected in the same idea. Another pshat of Sechvi is the aside, but okay, that Arizal says that actually by anyways, this is all like, it has more technical pshat, but that was the same story that Arizal gave us, and just in his own language, and slightly shortened version of this whole thing. The Rashash has his own pshat in this whole thing, if you look, but I'm not going to get into that. But based on how he divides the four parts of the day into four different partzifim and mind, ben, and so on. But it's all based on this. It's all based on the same structure. The first half of the night is the side of the Nuk, the side of the Malchus, which is heart, the side of Gvura, and then second half we mamtik it, so there's a yichud, and that's what a Nes Lasechvi Bina is about. It's about turning the first half of the night into the second half. In other words, making the wine misamech and not meshake, and that's why we have to make a special bracha. So really, we should say this bracha like pirim when we do. If you drink wine, then you want to be have it work in a good way. You should have to be mechavan a nice Lasechvi Bina, right? That's the Adkan. That's the kavana of this bracha.
So I'm thinking about, you said it was 6. We said it's like 6 sounds that it makes, right?
I think this is based on Perek Shira. What?
Well, I was just thinking about I'm pretty sure it's in the Gemara, it says that there's 6 shofar blasts that bring you into Shabbos, right?
Yeah.
Thinking about this number 6.
Technically, they have technical reasons, but yeah.
Yeah, that there's like the first one you stop doing this, the second one you stop doing this. I don't know, it just got me thinking about that. I don't know if there's an
There's 7 koilas and like koila Shem B'Koyach and all of that. It's obviously, right. But this is actually based on the Perek Shira. The Perek Shira says Tarniga Loime. Perek Dalet, Perek Shira. Shisha Berk Dish Berk has Tzadikim Began Eden. Zoilfim, so the Zohar seems to have connected this to the Chatzos, that's why. Zoilfim call it Gan Eden Besumim, Meranim Meshabchim. So when HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes in Gan Eden, all the trees of Gan Eden start to give out the good smells, and they start to say, to praise, and then the Tarnagel also wakes up and praises, and he has 6 different. This is also based on the reality that roosters don't only make one time noise; they keep on, they go on
Right,
and on.
I was gonna say.
And they tell he has 6 different psukim that they say because Rishanoim Sish Odem, because Shani Sish Odem, because Lish Im de Tzadikim Viski Batoira, because the V actually has 7. So probably the Zohar would divide 6 and 7, like whatever. So yeah, it must be based on that. We have to. There's a lot of Zohars about it. Like every week he talks about it. So we have to. This whole story of waking up and having alarm clocks, it's an old problem.
You hear my cat? He heard his name.
Yeah.
He came to learn.
Is he called Lasechvi?
No, he's called Gandalf.
Oh, okay.
But Lasechvi would be.
I'm thinking maybe someone should have a cat called Lasechvi.